My name is Craig Chisholm, the Field Technical Manager for Potatoes and Veg here at Corteva, and I'm going to go through a few of the key points about managing late blight in 2021. I'm going to begin by looking at the late blight population that we are managing in potatoes in the UK, looking at the population fitness, the diversity of strains which we're managing. And we'll talk about the implications that that has for the active ingredients that we have available to us, and obviously focusing on the actives which we look after here at Corteva. So on the previous slide, we mentioned a number of actives, and one of those was straight cymoxanil, which from Corteva is option. And while we are challenged going forward potentially with the loss of mancozeb, which is a key partner for a number of blight actives, at this point in time, we don't know how long we'll have it, but we will have to consider other options as partner products going forward for those actives which are supplied to the market as a straight to offer an anti-resistance strategy. An option is a good example of an active which will do that for you. You can see in red here, I've highlighted, I suppose, the key points that you need to be aware of in that you're allowed up to 8 applications within the program. It has a 1-day harvest interval, and it will offer you 3 days persistence within the plant, but it gives you that, because it's truly curative, it gives you that 2 days kickback. If you've got blight, which is active in the crop, you will be able to dry that up. This is a slide that comes from the James Hutton Institute, JHI, and it just gives you heads up on the challenges which we have for the chemical groups that we're using in our blight program. The population is dominated by, first off, 6A1, which is a fit, aggressive strain, which is why it's so dominant within the population, but we've managed to control it effectively. You can see that the next area that we look at is the rise of 36A2, which we've been aware of, which is a particularly fit and active strain, and has been cause of concern that the overall population that we are dealing with is more aggressive than it has been at any point up till now. You're still seeing a significant level of 37A2 within the overall population, so it hasn't declined. It clearly is still fit enough to compete with 36A2 and 6A1. And then finally, we have a number of others that are as yet undefined, though they tend to predominate in the north in that sort of seed potato area in Morayshire, but not exclusively. And I suppose the next question that then arises is, what do we have in our toolbox to deal with that? So simplifying it then and looking specifically at the chemical groups that we have available to us, the numbers on the right-hand side of the screen are the number of applications permitted per chemical group across the program. It looks as though we're spot for choice. We have a multitude of riches in what we can challenge late blight with. But in reality, it's not quite as straightforward as that. We don't have chlorothalonil available to us in Europe or the UK. And the phenylamides, while they are available, there is resistance within the population we're trying to manage. There is a reduced sensitivity within the population with 37A2 to fluazanam. So while available, they're not necessarily an attractive option for us. Mancozeb, while available to us this year, we'll see where the legislation takes us on its availability going forward. So then all of a sudden, we find ourselves with a reduced number of options. So we then have to make our decisions about how we're going to deploy our forces in a program. And that's what I'm going to move on to next. So we've considered the late blight population, the fact that it is increasingly aggressive and fit. We have got some either resistance or reduced sensitivity to some actives. Mancozeb is a very valuable material because of its activity against alternaria. So we want to make as much use of that as we can while we have it. And I've included cymoxanil there because a number of the products which are available as a single active ingredient we should be looking at ensuring that we have a partner for those as a part of the anti-resistance strategy. And Cymoxanil offers an ideal opportunity for that in the shape of option, because you've got up to 8 applications available to you. It has multiple sites where it is active against the pathogen, and it's truly curative. So here we are now. I'm just going to remind you a little bit about Zorvec Endavia. As you can see, it's a co-formulated product with benthiavalicard. So we've got 2 modes of action available to us. Zorvec is unique, coming from the oxysterol binding protein group. So that's a unique position. It's classified as group 49, and obviously benthiavalicard is a CAA coming from group 40 on the FRAC table. Zorvec Endavia is applied at 0.4 of a litre in potatoes, and you're allowed a maximum of 4 applications, but only 3 of which may be applied in a block. And generally, as we're going to explore in the next few slides, the recommendation from Corteva would be that you focus on 2 applications at rapid growth. So here's a depiction of blight epidemic. In this instance, this was at SRUC at Auchencrew on the west coast of Scotland, where they get extremely good levels of blight in trials. Black lines, interestingly, indicate the difference between applying our market standard as it's recommended on a 7-day interval versus a 10-day interval. And you can see why we've moved to a 7-day interval now. Now, these lines indicate use of a product right the way through the rapid growth and stable canopy phases of the crop. And you're looking at Zorvec Endavia at 0.4 here as the blue line, applied on 10 days throughout the rapid growth phase and the stable canopy phase of the crop. Now, that's more applications than you would have on the label, but it just gives you an indication of its inherent efficacy versus what is a very good standard. So this slide describes application within a program. What we're looking at is applications at the rapid growth phase, followed by a common program through the stable canopy phase of the crop. So the black dotted line indicates the standard propamicard plus fluopicolide, and that is being applied 4 times on a 7-day interval during the rapid growth phase of the crop. The darker blue dotted line is Zorvec being applied during the same time period on a 10-day interval. Once we're out of rapid growth, the same program was applied in both instances, that being Revus followed by Kurzite on an alternating pattern through the stable canopy phase of the crop. And what you can see here is that although the same program is being applied, we start to see a break from the 14th of August with the standard. And with the Zorvec treatment, that break doesn't come until the 4th of September. So we're getting what I've referred to here as a bit of a Zorvec bonus, which comes from the level of cleanliness achieved from applying Zorvec in that rapid growth phase. And the pale blue line, where it doesn't break away at all, is where we've used 2 Zorvecs in the rapid growth phase of the crop, and we've saved the remaining 2 on the label for use in the stable canopy phase when the blight epidemic was at its height. And just to show that that is repeatable, we did exactly the same program at ADAS in West Wales. Actually, our blight epidemic took off even faster here in West Wales, and that had an implications for our Zorvec bonus, shall we say, in that you can see there's a slight break in the standard from about the 19th of August. But the benefit that we received from having used Zorvec as opposed to the standard during rapid growth was slightly shorter. And that just related to the speed at which the late blight was cycling in this instance. And here's our Zorvec Endavia applied on 10 days at 0.4 under the same level of bright pressure. So this is just cheek by jowl with our untreated and our challenge standard. This then moves on to look at the application purely in the rapid growth phase. So this is what we were looking at earlier with our area under the curve. You can see our untreated here. Here's our 4 propamicard plus fluopicolide applications on 7 days during the rapid growth phase versus 3 Zorvec Endavias on 10 days as well. And you can see the benefit in terms of its curative activity, its systemic movement into new growth at that critical time of the growth of the crop, and its persistence. Looking at the data which lies behind that, you can see that difference is quite marked, and it just basically shows the strength of Zorvec in terms of level of control, curative activity, the persistence that it offers. So this is just a stylization of a crop and a program. It's whether you deploy your Zorvec 2 applications as either a block at T2, T3, or indeed T3, T4. The way the blight population evolved last year, the benefit was probably greater at T3, T4, but the previous year, T2, T3, the block, I would argue, makes it slightly easier because you could apply over 10 days and 11 days, allowing you to put those 2 applications on over 21 days. And then you can drop straight back into your 7-day program once you're out the other side of that block. Then utilizing Zorvec at the stable canopy phase, I would argue that rather than just purely being an emergency response when blight pressure is very high or you've actually got active blight in the crop, it's something that you should plan in as part of your strategy. If you remember, when we were looking at the area under the curve, there was a clear benefit from getting that cleanest possible start and then having Zorvec available to us as and when blight pressure came on. So I would argue that Zorvec is a structural requirement for the program to get you that clean start with 2 applications at the rapid growth phase, and then maintain the option of 1 to 2 applications during stable canopy, just to ensure that we stay on top of late blight. The greatest benefit to growers from the use of Zorvec is going to be for crops destined for storage, where they need to be stored as clean as possible. And for those trying to manage crops further from home, where the risk of stretched intervals is going to be greatest. And indeed, as blight pressure increases and intervals are compressed to 5 or even 4 days, Zorvec may be used on 7 days to enable users to maintain their 7-day program. Just a little reminder for those who have other crops, Zorvec Endavia also has a recommendation for use in onions for managing downy mildew. The rate in onions is different from that in potatoes. It is 0.5 of a litre per hectare in onions. You're allowed a maximum of 3 applications in the crop, and only 2 of those may be used in sequence. Thank you very much for your attention. If you need anything further, please don't hesitate to call the helpline or email us at ukhotline@corteva.com. Thank you.